What's going on, YouTube? Hope everybody out there is having a great and fabulous day. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Pretty much, how the hell are ya? Welcome back, guys. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some history with the French racing company Elf. Now, if you don't know what Elf is, Elf was a lubrication pretty much providing racing oils and oils for motorcycles and MotoGP and Formula One and a host of other things. But before Elf was really Elf, right around 1965, there were three French oil companies. I'm not going to go ahead and butcher their names, so I'll just go ahead and use their abbreviations. RAP, SNPA, BRP. These three would merge together, put all their resources all in one, and they would rebrand themselves as Elf. Elf standing for Essence Lubrications France. It's real patriotic. So on April 28, 1967, they started pumping out their products under the new Elf name. And another thing is that Elf was the first company to pioneer synthetic racing oil. Now, as I'm doing all this research for this video, there is a very dark cloud surrounding Elf with corruption, scandals, schemes, which I'm not going to really focus on, but if there's any of that information that relates to any of their motorsports history, then I'm definitely going to pick that up. But for now, I just want to go ahead and talk about these amazing looking motorcycles. I mean, they look like they're from the future, and it's just really cool. So go ahead and sit back, relax. Let's get right into Elf and its history. Powered by the Yamaha TZ750 engine, the Elf X appeared in concept form at the 1978 Paris show. An all-new type of a design and rethink the conventional racing motorcycles of the time. The project was designed by French engineer André de Courtazin, whatever, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, Andre. A then Formula One engineer, and the basic idea behind the bike was to get rid of all preconceived notions and designs of what a motorcycle should look like. The aim was to lower the center of gravity, add a anti-dive suspension, and reduce weight, as well as having a chassis forming to its own entity and not just a support. Other key features were to balance the weight distribution 50-50 if possible, improve their aerodynamics, and quick change system for wheels. Having all that, the cooling was reworked and improved, as well as a possibility to tweak the setup of the bike easily. A very complicated project, but it didn't scare the dude. Built and engineered in his spare time at Renault, because remember, he was working for F1, and Elf did have a partnership with Renault. The front fork was to be replaced by a parallel arm suspension, and at the back would be a single-sided swing arm. The engine would play a stressed member and hold everything in place. The fuel tank was located under the engine to lower the weight, and the wind tunnel was used heavily. If I could think of one word as I'm looking at this picture, as I'm looking at the exhaust, I mean, it looks like a Tron bike. That's all I can say. Insane, radical, far from the norm. Anyways, track testing began in 1978. Prior to the official debut of the bike later that year at Nogaro, the concept proved complicated and the engine was no good for a stressed member idea, and Andre, being unable to work full-time on the project, it was not as good as expected. Nonetheless, a manufacturer was interested. Honda. A private test was held in 1979 with Honda's own test rider, and collaboration was then launched, so Honda provided the Works 1000 RSC endurance engine for the 1980 season, and Andre would begin work on all the new designs from the lessons learned. So I guess the ethos behind the Elf X was what could a engineer that primarily was focusing on F1 race cars can do in the motorcycle sector, and see how he could apply what he learned from F1 and race cars and see how it could be applied to a motorcycle, and whether or not that motorcycle would be competitive or would that revolutionize the system at the time. That's what it kind of comes down to, I feel like, in this scenario with Andre. Andre was an F1 engineer, and he decided to partake in motorcycles, and this is what we have from that. So after its debut in the earlier years with the Yamaha 750 engine, and Honda took over and decided to sponsor ELF, they came up with the ELF-E. ELF-E was an endurance racer 1000cc Honda powered machine. So now the ELF-E would debut back in '81. It competed in almost every race in the World Endurance Championship until the end of '83. And looking at this bike now, you could see that it's a lot more refined, it looks like. I mean, obviously it has headlights now because it's competing in endurance racing. The swing arms look a little bit different, though the ELF-E was very fast, often qualifying on pole and leading early laps. The chassis was unreliable. Refined to its purest form of the Andre design, it finished in third in the final 1000cc TTI endurance race at Mugello. With this new radical design of a chassis, it would do good in the beginning, but it just would lack stamina to really hold on to its position. Now the ELF-2 in '83 was the end of their 1000 endurance racing era. This pretty much was a new beginning for them to start building prototypes in the GP racing and reap obviously more good press. And you know, whenever you have a company that's making a particular product for a motorcycle, you always want to win races and just get your name out there, because then people are going to assume that that's the best product. It's like the saying goes, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. Same kind of deal right there. So more people are going to be looking at you, more sponsors want to sponsor you, and all that good stuff. So from '78 to around '84, the ELF was participating in the 1000 Endurance Racing Championship. In '84, that's when Honda decided to give them a 3-cylinder RS500 engine. So after they received that engine, they began testing. Its most interesting feature was a revolutionary steering system, consisting of handlebars mounted to the crossmember and rigged to move back and forth, rather than pivoting side to side. The suspension was also adventurous, utilizing a pair of specially made Marzocchi shocks beneath the engine that would work in traction rather than compression. Whatever the hell that means. The Black Bird, as it was dubbed by the French press, never raced. So riders found the new steering system, for lack of a better word, as absolute dog shit. It sucked, alright? I mean, it would have been cool to see that thing on the grid, but it just wasn't in the cars. The proximity of the suspension pivots and the inefficient dampening from that special Marzocchi shock led to incurable handling problems. They can never get it to handle properly and stay consistent for as long as they needed to. It just wouldn't work. It didn't debut until a year later at the French Grand Prix at Le Mans, by which it had morphed into a less quirky ELF-2A with a proven ELF-E type hub center steering, which also had revised suspension. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, this is when our friend Andre, the man that curated this whole idea, the guy that was right there in the beginning, started working on this thing, the guy that pretty much brought us this amazing looking motorcycle and timepiece in history and motorsports history, was forced to give up his involvement with the ELF project due to the fact that he was getting a lot of pressure from his other job at Peugeot, because they were like, dude, you need to come over here, stop messing with those motorcycles, we need you here winning races for us. So he had to leave at that point. So with Andre leaving us, there's some new fresh faces. We have race manager Sergei Rossen and engineer Dan Trema, and they immediately got to work on trying to figure out what's the best way to get some real world results. So they went to Honda, and Honda actually gave them an NS500 GP engine, which would be carrying British rider Ron Haslam, which was the 5th standing rider in the previous year's GP. It was a great and promising package. The results were there from the start of the season, with Ron claiming World Championship points in the first round of the 1986 season at Jarama, Spain. So it really proved to be a great match. I mean, the French team and the British rider were a hit. I mean, they were getting the job done. And I don't know if you guys saw my last video on the RC30, but in that I mentioned that Honda was using a patent-pending single-sided swing arm by Elf, a agreement that they had together. It was officially named the Pro Arm. The Elf 4 and 5. Following the 86 results, work began on the next season and the Elf 4. Honda for the first time opened its HRC headquarters to Elf engineer Trema, so he could work on the NSR 500C V4 GP engine. Whew, that's a mouthful. And to design bespoke parts for the new bike. The bike suffered serious braking problems. The chassis, first made out of carbon fiber, proved to be too fragile for competition, and the bike was to be heavily developed for the 1988 season, renaming it the Elf 5. The carbon fiber chassis was replaced with a cast magnesium. The brakes were upgraded as well. Nonetheless, Haslam secured a 1986 Macau GP win and proved that the bike was definitely competitive. Now, in our final iteration, I mean, it's just crazy that Elf went through literally every single league, I guess you could say. We are at the Elf R now, and the Elf R was a super streamlined version of the Elf, just strictly built to break world land speed records. So, I mean, as you can see, it has a crazy bodyworks going on. Honda supplied them with their HRC 1000 engine. In 86, the Elf R reached 200 miles per hour in Italy. I mean, just look at the tail, look at the nose. It's just crazy. So it had, obviously, I mean, it had carbon fiber frame. It had, Jesus, look at that. So shortly after the Elf R, they kind of just stopped doing, you know, these bikes. I think this was like the last real thing that they did. And in the 90s, they had some scandals and corruptions with financial misuse of money and other things, which maybe that was a result of them not continuing making these radical bikes, or maybe they just kind of gave up on it. Who knows? I don't know what to tell you on that. But I just saw these bikes for what they are. I think they're beautiful. I think they're gorgeous. They're so ugly. Some of them are so ugly that they're gorgeous. That's the way I look at it. And with that, that's going to bring us to our conclusion. I'm sure there's some things I left out. At the end of the day, I'm just a guy making some videos on my spare time. I am not a Wikipedia. I am not a scholar of motorcycles. I just love them, and if I see something that really interests me, then I'm going to make a video about it. If there's something I left out, which I'm probably sure there is, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, give it a like. If you don't like this video, give it a dislike. That's why they're there. And with that, stay up. 2 wheels down. Peace.